Hi there, and welcome to this edition of DJKIT TV. My name's Simon from DJKIT.com, and today we're going to be looking at the Cyclone Analogic drum drone, the TT-606. This is an amazing piece of kit. I've been waiting for this for around 3 years, and I cannot wait to show you guys what this stuff can do. So here we have the Cyclone Analogic TT-606 drum drone. It's based on a classic drum machine, the 606, which I'm sure we're all very familiar with. And comes from Cyclone, who are probably most renowned for producing the TT-303. This is a brand new machine. It's only just been released. It is typically very similar to the original machine. It has many functions that really make this a very unique machine and a joy to play with. We have our independent drum sounds at the top here, which we can adjust the tone, and we can also adjust the decay for certain sounds within this spectrum here. We have our instrument select button here, so we can select each instrument and we can adjust the volume and the tone as we wish. So we have our tempo control over here. We have our time button here, which we can change obviously 64th bars or 32nd bars, which enables us to do intricate patterns, etc. On this side, we have what we call the shuffle, which goes from very slight shuffle, just to give the beat a little bit of a swing, to quite extreme shuffle, which, you know, I don't know how useful that will be, but the option is there if you're doing some crazy minimal techno Detroit type styly stuff. So I think let's just step into it and have a look at how it really works. So if we go into pattern write mode, we can select the bass drum, and if we press start, you can see that the cursor is rolling through the 16 beats of our sequencer. So typically we'll be looking at placing a kick drum on 1, 5, 9 and 13. That will give us our typical 4/4 drum kick. As you can see here, we can adjust the volume of that. So here we have our drum kick. We can obviously adjust the tuning of that. And anybody who's familiar with the 606 will recognize that very distinct drum sound. Okay, so let's now move on to, let's start with a closed hi-hat. So if we turn the instrument select rotary to the closed hat, we can then just enter in our closed hats. Again, we can tune that. Now if we press the function key, we can adjust the decay of those hi-hats. It's not particularly relevant at the moment because it works much better with the open hi-hat. Okay, so we've got our hi-hats here. Now you can add beats or move them around, but we can embellish those quite substantially by using the roll, flam and accents, which I'll move on to slightly later. Let's just build up a little beat first. So now I think we'll add a bit of a low tom, just to give it a bit of a swing. So if I just add, and there we've got our little beat going. I'm now just going to enter an open hi-hat. So there we have a very basic pattern. Let's just add a clap there just for, and again with the clap, you can adjust the decay. So there we have a very basic drum pattern going. We've got our claps, hi-hats, drums, kick and low tom. So now let's just have a look at a bit more of what we can actually do to those rhythms. So for instance, we can now go to our mix button by pressing function and mix. These buttons relate to each of these individual instruments, so we can mute buttons and introduce them as we wish on the fly. We can also, for instance, now if we go back to the closed hat, what we can do, we could add a roll, for instance. So now if I press roll and highlight those buttons, you can hear we've got that very Detroit, if you like, Plastic Man triplet kind of roll going on. And that's easy enough to remove. We can just remove those there. And then let's add a bit of shuffle on that as well. So now if we go to time, that is no shuffle. The bottom one here is no shuffle, and then we can go to extreme shuffle. And the shuffle affects the whole of the sequence that we've got run. So all of the drums, sounds, instruments, if you like, are affected by that. As you can see, that's quite extreme. But if we head for kind of this one, you can hear it adds a real kind of swing and groove to it. Now if we go back to, say, the bass drum, we can add an accent. So if we just add an accent to the kicks, we can add accents to each individual instrument as well. So it's not a global accent, it's an individual accent. So now if we go back to the tom, I'll just add an accent there. And I may even add a flam to that last tom as well. So flam, it doesn't really work with the tom. So hang on. So there we have it. We've got our low tom accented there now. And what we can do now, if we go back, for instance, if we go back to our closed hat, we can add a flam. Now a flam is just replicates as if a drummer was hitting the drum or the hat with both sticks. So you get a kind of a double hit, if you like. I'll actually put that onto the clap. You might be able to hear it a little better. Let's put a bit of a roll on that as well. So you can see the flexibility that we've got here to give each instrument a different sound, a different groove. It is very, very flexible. So another thing which I really, really like about this product, I mean, we've got, you know, if you're used to using drum machines, then it has all of those facilities and all of those functions. But this has some functions that I've never seen on a machine before, which really make this machine unique. This nuance button, for instance. This adds an almost human feel to the drum rhythms. Again, you can add it to each individual instrument, so it's not a global effect. It gives it a real swing, and these go from extreme to light. So if we just try a very extreme nuance on the kick drum, and you can adjust the amount of that nuance by using the tone button. Now you can hear that is changing tone slightly, the bass kick drum. So it gives you a very extreme kind of nuance, but now if we go to the closed hat, we can add some more nuance on that. And you can see it adds a really nice kind of skippy, tone changing, decay changing almost rhythm. It really makes it roll really, really lovely. Now you can add that to one sound, or you can add it across the whole sounds. You just need to go into each individual sound and add whichever nuance you fancy, or which one you think will lift the sound. You can hear there, look, the bass drum has really got a nice little change. It really sounds as if it's being played, you know, by a human, if you like. I love this. It really gives it that instant Detroit Plastic Man feel, you know, without the hard work, if you like. So if we stop the unit now, we can copy and paste that part into a new part, and then we can add, you know, different feels, or add drums or remove drums or whatever to give, you know, to start creating a track. And it's really easy to do. We just select our pattern, we select copy, we select our destination, and then we select paste. And you can see that that pattern is now copied into that instance there. Really easy to use, really intuitive as well. You know, I picked this up, and after an hour, I was quite happily making some really nice rhythms with it. Another great feature of this is when we're also in write mode, is if we select function and fill, what happens is it will actually copy the existing pattern into a fill pattern. That doesn't actually take up any of our pattern slots, if you like. It's almost a virtual pattern. That will enable us to adjust that pattern so we can create a fill. So if I just show you that by pressing function and holding fill, it's flashing now. That has now been copied. So what we can do is we can go into our bass drum and we can start changing stuff around. So let's just do a little roll there. And if we go to the closed hat, we'll take out a few of those. And we'll take out the hi-hat as well. And we'll just have a few claps in there. In fact, we can put a roll on that. We'll put a flam on there. So that is fundamentally now our fill. If we go back into play mode, this is our existing pattern that we have playing, and then just by pressing fill, it will play that 16 beat fill. It's a really nice little touch because it doesn't take up any of our pattern slots, and you know, it just gives you a lot more flexibility to start playing around with the sounds and, you know, creating interesting fills. Now let's look at some of the other features of this drum drone. We've got separate outputs for each of the individual instruments, and once you put a jack into those instruments, it removes it from the main output, which is a really lovely touch, because I know with some drum machines you have to tweak about and assign each sound to each output. This is quite, you know, this is really nice. So if you're going to be outputting that into a mixer, it gives you the opportunity to obviously EQ, mix, or add effects to. It's lovely little, and plus the fact that you don't have to assign it, I really like that. We've got our phones output, we've got our main output here as well. We've got MIDI in and out, which also is switchable to a through. So you could use this in an existing MIDI setup if you've got external analog gear, or you could even use it in a modular setup. But what I also really like about this is it doesn't have USB. Now, why doesn't it have USB? Because it's an analog machine and they wanted to keep it as original and as analog as they possibly could. It also has an audio input as well. So for instance, if you were using it in conjunction with, say for instance, the TT-303, you could just take the output from the 303 into the input on the drum drone, and then you could just take the output from the drum drone as a single output for the 303 and the 606. So now let's introduce some cymbal into this. Now that's not your typical cymbal sound, but that's because we have several different instruments associated with the cymbal. So if I press function and instrument, that will bring up our instrument select button. So here we have our instrument select button, and we can obviously adjust the decay time with the tone button. And by pressing function, we can change the tuning. So now if I go back to instrument, you can see the other sounds. Now I love these sounds because you can really hear the analog warmth and the real analog sound of this unit. And it's got some sounds that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a drum unit. So another thing that I didn't mention about the MIDI out and through, although it doesn't have USB, the clock on this is really tight. So if you do have an external audio device that does have a MIDI input, then you can just take the input or the output from your MIDI device, and obviously you can control it via an external sequencer. At the moment we're using it standalone, and the clock is really tight with it. I have used it with an audio interface into Ableton, and I can say that the clock is really, really impressive. It's really solid, it's really nice. So we've got our pattern playing again here, and if you don't really want to do the step sequencing style, you can always tap. So there we are, we've just tapped in. Add a bit of roll to the rim shot there. Let's have a bit of accent there as well. And as I said, this accent is per instrument as well, which is really nice, so you can really start getting a good shuffle and groove going. Add that with the shuffle, then you've got instant Detroit techno, minimal tech. So you've been watching DJKIT TV. If you want any more information, follow the link below the video. These are in stock right now, but grab them quick because they're going to go.